running Dungeons and Dragons are going to come into situations where you need to adjudicate an interaction between magical spells, abilities, and items, and players trying to use them and combine them in interesting ways that the designers didn't anticipate, and neither did we when we gave those to them. And that puts magic in these kind of role-playing systems closer to a hard magic system than a soft magic system for me. If you've never heard of that spectrum, it comes from, to the best of my knowledge, Brandon Sanderson. Sanderson is a writer, and if you need a place to start with his works, I personally recommend Warbreaker, because it is a self-contained novel. You don't have to read 3, 4, 6 books to get the whole story. It's in a world where you can take souls and stick them into items to make magic items, and there's a really interesting god there that does not believe he's a god, which I always thought would be a really cool concept for a cleric. Tyr, would you please grant to me powers, abilities, miracles, spells that I can use to help my fellow adventurers as we go out there to slay your enemies, demons, devils, things that threaten your worshippers?
Yeah, no problem. Really appreciate that, by the way. Just, small point, tiny thing, not a god.
I'm praying to you and you're answering me. What do you mean, not a god?
No, I have no idea what I am. Just, not a god.
What? I'm James, I'm a Dungeon Master, and I talk about all the things I think of and consider as I'm putting together worlds and adventures for my players to enjoy. While we talk about magic, there's buttons down there for like and subscribe, and I'd appreciate it if you click both of those. Brandon Sanderson has his first law of magic, that a writer's ability to solve conflicts with magic is directly proportional to the reader's ability to understand that magic system. At the end of a campaign, players and Dungeon Masters have come together to tell a story. It's not something that happens in advance with the Dungeon Master just going, here's everything that the players are going to do, every NPC they're going to meet, and they're going to solve the problems exactly the way that I have anticipated them solving them. But there is a story at the end of this thing. You could chop this thing up and write a book or a television show or a movie. People have done that. And that means we are simultaneously, both players and Dungeon Masters, readers and authors at the same time. And if we are going to create magical problems with weird villain powers and special effects and phenomenon that the players are going to solve with their magic, we need to understand how that magic system is going to work so we can make fair judgment calls so the players can start to anticipate how that's going to work and go, yes, that will absolutely work. Go ahead and do that. Or the players going, oh, that's why that worked that way, which is a great feeling. One of the biggest compliments I've ever received in playing Dungeons & Dragons was during a session where there was a magical phenomenon. My magic system involves both the law and chaos side of magic. The player realized what was going on before the other players, and I didn't have to explain it. He said, no, that makes sense in the lore of the world because this isn't the chaos type area. This is the law area, so it will do this. And he was right. When Dungeon Masters complain about spells, they usually complain about combat primary spells, something like Healing Word or Silvery Barbs. And that's fair. In combat, we're trying to keep you on this razor's edge of victory or defeat. And spells like that can make the pacing arc where we're trying to build up to a climax just go... But those spells are primarily combat, and that means they're a numerical problem, and numerical problems have numerical solutions. The designers could certainly change the game in a future edition so that it doesn't have that problem, but there's also other DMs that provided lots of solutions for those, and lots of them are very good. I've used some of them. There are other spells that are problematic for Dungeon Masters because they are fuzzy in here, on purpose, because the designers cannot possibly anticipate every way they're going to be used. Spells that come into effect during a role-playing kind of session. These are spells like Speak with Dead, Zone of Truth, and something like Detect Thoughts. Those spells allow players to get information, and to many Dungeon Masters, it can feel like a giant I win button. I have cast a spell, I took it, give me the answers, Dungeon Master. Mysteries, investigations, like Blood of Shadows that I did for a recent video, are the perfect opportunity to use some of these sauce spells. Spells with role-play answers, where the Dungeon Master is going to have to answer as a character. In that adventure, there are 2 corpses. It is very likely that the players are going to want to cast Speak with Dead on one or both of these corpses. And if the Dungeon Master has not started to anticipate that it might be cast, or how they might answer it, it can put them on the spot. It is very likely that the player's first question is going to be, who killed you? If you give them an answer like, they never saw the killer, or it was too dark, or they came up from behind them and whacked them in the back of the head with a pipe, it can feel like a wasted spell to the players. Why do I even bother taking these spells if you're going to give me an answer like that? I'd be better off taking something like spiritual weapon rather than this spell if it's at your whim to not answer me. That's fair, but there are ways to answer that question that give them something to move the story forward and feel like they got an answer without just shortening your adventure and chopping it from 4 hours to 30 minutes. The spell says that the corpse only knew what it knew in life. What if what it knew was wrong? Something like alter self, any of the illusions, a disguise hat, or even just a disguise kit will allow you to disguise the killer so that you can misdirect the players. They got some information out of it, the story went forward, but you haven't chopped your adventure in half. Imagine the players question Elvir's corpse and Elvir's answer comes back, Linton the Acolyte killed me. And then the players go question Linton the Acolyte. Linton the Acolyte didn't kill him. Linton gives a bunch of answers that their insight, their intimidation, their persuasion all tells them, no, it was not Linton. Linton has his own ideas of what's going on. Maybe Linton is a doppelganger. Maybe there are two doppelgangers. One doppelganger that is Linton and is running around killing people, and one doppelganger that is currently actually there as Linton in the church. In which case they are now kind of the perfect alibi for one another because there's no way this person can be in two places at once. Detect thoughts is probably going to come up. It says right in the spell description that this spell is particularly useful as part of an interrogation. And it can be tempting to bypass that with something like non-detection or rings of mind shielding. These people are, after all, wealthy, and they live in a world where magic exists. They may not know who uses it, who's going to cast it, but if you're a wealthy lord and you're a politician, wouldn't you go out and get a ring of mind shielding because somebody might try to read your thoughts? If we were going to go commit a crime, we live in a world where cameras are everywhere. Don't go do that. You would put on a mask or something so someone can't capture your face. But you are kind of spoiling a player's choice of a spell. To me, whenever somebody asks a question, I imagine that the first thing that comes in everybody's head is an emotional reaction to that question. Before the logic side of the brain ticks in and starts going, okay, here's how you should deal with that. They feel maybe joy, annoyance, sadness, or confusion, something like that. So you ask Arister questions about Grayson and Marith. He probably feels frustrated. Is that frustration due to what he's done with Grayson or Marith? Or is it frustration at being interrupted by a bunch of adventurers that he sees as not worth asking questions? The players aren't going to know until they dig deeper with the spell and try to get under surface thoughts. At which point, Arister is entitled to his wisdom save, and he might detect that the players are in there. And then he's perfectly entitled as a person to go get out of my head and get out of my office. The players might decide that instead of trying to dig deeper, instead of trying to push their I win button, they want to use insight check. Now there's a risk at more misinformation, failure, or a success. Things like Magic Mouth, Enthrall, Dream, Mass Suggestion. These are the spells that when the players look at them in the player's handbook, they're going, what the heck is that for? When would I ever take that spell? What do I use Magic Mouth for? You don't. The Dungeon Master uses that, classically to make a statue talk and deliver a riddle or a piece of information, something for the adventure. My personal favorite is kind of the suggestion-y charm spells, the big mass ones. Take, for example, a situation where your players have to get rid of a bad guy lieutenant. They go kill this lieutenant, they come back to town, they're greeted as heroes. Yay, you got rid of the lieutenant, that's great. Except your bad guy needs to remind people, I am lord of this land. These people are mine, and you will do nothing to take them from me. And they cast Enthrall on everyone in the crowd, and they watch as the bad guy walks through them, touching them, taking things from them, maybe kissing a baby on the forehead as he makes the way to the players. And then the bad guy casts Message, so the crowd can't even hear what's being said by the bad guy, and delivers a message directly to the players. What are those people going to do when the bad guy leaves? If you want to go further than that, maybe use Mass Suggestion on everyone in the crowd, and for 24 hours, this town is now hostile to the players against the NPC's will. Even if the players do somehow overcome this, they leave and they come back, what's that town going to feel like for the players? This bad guy just came in and took away their free will. What were we thinking fighting them? What were we thinking being supporters of you? Are you crazy? We cannot fight him. Get out of here before more trouble comes our way. And that can undo all the good that the players thought they were doing, which is classically part of storytelling. The big reversal where everything was going good until it's not. Other great spells include Dream and Sequester and Non-Detection. If you use Dream, you can have the bad guy invade the player's mind, and every time they're waking up, they are taking psychic damage as nightmares are delivered straight into the player's brains. You can use Sequester to do a classic fairy tale kind of thing, like Sleeping Beauty, where this person that they have to go and rescue from sleep is 200, 300 years old. They're a night out of time, and they have some information about this current situation, but they don't understand what's happened in the last 300 years, which could be a really interesting way to deliver a new player character, because the old player character died and they want to play that kind of Sleeping Beauty, person out of time idea. That will allow you to just put this person there. That's what those spells are for. Spells, abilities, and magic items are not magic with a capital M. They're the things that allow characters in your world, including the player characters, to interact with magic with a capital M. It's like the cell phone. This is not the internet. The apps on here are not the internet. They're the things that allow us to interface with the internet and do things. And most of the time, that's not a problem. We don't need to care about how the internet works. We just need to use the map to figure out the directions. Some dungeon masters are not going to care about world building and how magic actually works in their world because their story's not going to go there. That's not the kind of story that they want to tell. But for other dungeon masters, it can be an inspiration. Why is Tiamat trapped in the Nine Hells? What deal or what mistake did she make that put her there? Does this have greater implications for your worlds? Wherever you are playing, whether you care about it or not, there is something in your world that is allowing these magical things to function. It may just be magic is just there. Maybe you do something with ley lines, something like Final Fantasy VII's life stream, combining it and saying all the world is funded by this life stream, and that's where magic comes from. In my world, it comes from the push and pull between the two creator deities of the universe that are now dead, and they continue to exhibit some influence on the world in the forms of magic. In Forgotten Realms, it's the weave. That's what allows magic to function. What is it in your world? It's kind of like a teaser for my world building in a way, because I do want to do a whole playlist of videos about world building, using my own world and deconstructing it, show what I thought about at different stages and where I was when players kind of needed things and how I backwards retrofitted things on and went in there. But my players are currently playing in that world, and I don't want to spoil it for them because they are kind of digging down into the bones of my world and discovering secrets. Plus, those might change because whatever they do, I might need to come up with reasons why things work the way they do. And I don't like retconning things. I've done it. It annoys me. I don't want to do it. So I don't want to put something down on video, I guess, and then have my players say, but video says. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, you're a player too. Try to have some fun.